Then beyond texture, we can actually adjust the material parameters. So for a metal, you have only a couple of parameters because the metal is rather simple. You have the color of the metal and you have the roughness of the metal. If I bring my roughness all the way down, you can see we have a nice, sharp material. Now, it doesn't look entirely sharp. You're actually getting distortion of your reflections based on your bump map. So let me just disable that bump map and show you roughness a little bit more. With the bump map disabled, you can see this is basically a mirror surface. You zoom out a bit here, and move this over here also. You can see how that's really a shiny, reflective surface. We're catching the reflections from the environment in that surface. Now, if I double click again, make sure I'm on the right material, if I just increase my roughness, you can see how that starts to particularly blur that environment and the reflections coming from it. And of course, the materials are independent of each other, so you have a nice sharp reflection here on the black plastic, and you have a nice rough reflection on the metal. I'm going to bring it back down to maybe even more subtle than that, so let's do just 0.01. You can see how you can actually input really subtle values of roughness. I can even go lower than that, 0.005, even 0.001. You just get a nice slight blur. You'll see how if I go to 0, the difference there. A very slight blur sometimes is all you need. Then I'm going to bring my bump map back. Let's just bring this one here. We'll sync it back up to our color texture. And of course, this bump map looks incredibly bumpy right now, so I'm just going to bring that slider back down to a nice subtle level so that we get that brushed metal look. That's not bad. The next thing I might take a look at is this black plastic. It looks a little too perfect here. So again, we can go to our plastic material just by double-clicking on the object. It brings up the relevant material. And the plastic material is quite a bit more advanced than the metal material in that you have a diffuse color and specular and some transmission. You'll actually notice that in KeyShot you can hide a lot of the advanced material properties that you don't often use, and they're actually hidden by default. And the way you uncover or you hide them is with the Show Advanced Material Properties option here in Edit, Preferences, Show Advanced Material Settings. So when I double-click that, we get a couple more options now. But basically, when making a plastic, you just have to worry about diffuse color. So if I bring some red into the diffuse color here, nice subtle level of red, we have now a red plastic. We have the specular color. By using a darker color, you get less specular. You can see if I turn it all the way to black, it's actually just a nice diffused, soft-looking material now. And if I bring it all the way to white, it becomes very shiny. And then beyond that, you have to control the IOR, and actually, it's one of our pre-made materials here has an IOR of 3 point something, which is a bit high for a plastic. So I'm going to put that back down to 1.5, which is much more realistic. You can see now we can just easily control the color of this. We can put it to anything we want. Very simply, just change the material color. And of course, you can go back into the material library here, clear out your search. You can go through all of these different plastics. Use an orange plastic, use a red plastic. You honestly don't have to do any customization if you don't want to. You can find yourself a white plastic here, a black plastic here. Let's just go with this orange one here. Now, one of the things about our newest version at KeyShot is that we have a material that can actually more perfectly represent plastic that you might actually be using, and that's our translucent material. So let me see if those made it into this material library. Here we go. Translucent material library here. This is a new thing for 2.1 version of KeyShot. You'll find these actually allow light to scatter beneath the surface, which is something that's previously been unheard of in real-time ray tracing. So let me just drag this this material here. I'll just let that res up for a second. You'll really get the idea right away. You can see the kind of effect you're getting with the light scattering beneath the surface. And if it's not too obvious right now, if I just kind of look under the surface here, if this wasn't a translucent material, there would be no light coming through the surface right here. And we can see the levels of translucency by just adjusting the translucency slider in the material. Just like all of our other materials, we've made translucent material very simple. If I turn this down, or if I can turn this back to a plastic material, that's what it looks like without translucency. Totally dark. And if I turn translucency on, I bring my translucency slider up, it allows light to come through that surface. And of course, the transmission color is actually what is the color of the light coming through the surface. So let me just bring that up to a much brighter, more pronounced color. And you can see I've set my transmission color to red, and I'm getting a lot of red light coming through. And these materials can be used for a wide range of things, like human skin and of course, plastics. So, and things like marble, you can see the marble material here, letting light through the surface. And basically the texture seen is actually produced procedurally, so it will always look right no matter what the mapping on your material, on your object is. You can put the human skin on here. The graphics, the computer's telling me there's an issue. It must have to do with GoToMeeting running at the same time. Let me see if I can get this to restart itself. Let's see. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I'm not, sometimes running with GoToMeeting causes some anomalies. Okay, let's get right back to it. I'm going to bring my stapler back here. And we know we just need to move this. And this will show you really how quickly this will go once you kind of know where everything is. Bring that down to the ground level. Done. Materials, all plastic. Just bring orange onto there. And materials, metals, steel. There we go. Then click over to environments. HDR Light Studio here. And these are a lot of environments made in actual the HDR Light Studio editor software. We can try a couple of these out. Not sure which one I liked best. This one is pretty good. Okay. And then we'll bring our backplate back. It's actually saved into our library now since we used it last time. And there we go. So we're back already to where we were. So that kind of gives you a sense of how quick this can go. And let's get back into a couple more material things here. Like I was saying, we can bring a translucent material onto here. And one that we would actually use is something like blue translucent. It's a nice subtle effect, and we can adjust it as needed. Double click on that, and you can see the translucent level. You can see the IOR of the material. And just like every other material, you have the roughness sliders. So if I find myself a reflection that's too sharp, like this right here, I can go in and just like your metals material, just like your plastic material, you just increase the roughness to soften that surface. And the higher I increase that roughness, the softer that surface is going to look. To the point where you can have like a really soft, like silicone type look. And the translucency is really what sets that off. I just bring the brightness of this material up. Let that just kind of res up for a second. Translucent materials certainly are more render intensive than many of the other material types. but oftentimes they're exactly what you need to just add that to realism. Here, just like every material, you have very simple color reflectors. So I'm just going to make this orange. And it's red, reddish orange here. And bring my roughness back down to a nice subtle level. That's pretty nice. Now, once you have your scene sort of set up, very easy to output your final image. You can use a couple of options. The first one is simply the screenshot option, which allows you to just save out basically exactly what you see right here. So once it finishes resing up, you just click screenshot, or once you're happy with how long it's resed up, it doesn't actually finish, it'll keep going for as long as you allow it to. Click screenshot, save out a JPEG of your image, and if you just open up your library, you can actually see your renderings right here and open them up. And there's my rendering. Well, then the other options you have are to click render, and you have just a render options tab here where you can put in the file format, a name for it, and a resolution. In the Pro version, this can go up to any resolution you want, 10,000, 20,000. It all just depends on the amount of RAM you have on the computer. But even on a small laptop with only 4 or 6 gigs of RAM, you'll be able to do some pretty high res images, 10,000 by whatever, usually works just fine. So you can put in something like 1920 by 1040, and you have actually basically 2 render modes here that you can use. You can use what we've had in the past, which is an offline render. And with that, you actually have to go in and set your render quality settings. This is actually kind of like your typical ray tracing software, where you have samples and global illumination quality and all of these settings that you need to tune in order to get a fast and high-quality render. So what we've actually done, since we've put so much work into our real-time rendering engine, we figured why not just use the real-time rendering engine for your final image. So in order to do that, you just click Use Real-Time Render. Then when you go over to quality, you don't have as many options. All you have to say is, I want it to render for this number of frames, or I want it to render for this number of seconds. So I can put this up to, let's just do 15 seconds, which obviously isn't going to be enough. But when we click render, you'll see it pops up. And again, there's no limit to the render resolution. So it used to be, if you wanted a final render at a higher resolution, you have to use our offline render mode, which isn't always ideal because you may not be an expert on render settings. This takes away that necessity. Just set it to whatever resolution you want, and you let it render for as long as it needs. Once it's done, click close, and again, you'll be able to see that right here in the renderings tab. And 10 seconds or 15 seconds or whatever it was wasn't enough for this render, but you'll be able to adjust that as much as you need. A couple of other cool things about KeyShot that we've seen recently is certainly the effects options here. So you'll see if you enable effects, very subtle effect right now, but it's actually creating a little bit of a bloom on the surface, or on the image here. I can increase the bloom intensity, and I can increase the bloom radius. You'll start to see that in this highlight here especially, you're getting a bloom of light. So you get a little bit of a softer feel. And you may think you're limited to these settings, but I can actually type in 50, I can type in 500, and you'll get some crazy levels of bloom. So remember that with our software, you're not limited to what we give you in the slider. You can actually type in anything you need. We definitely tried to make our sliders the common ranges, but if you need a higher level of bloom or any other setting, just type it in, and it'll give it to you. The other cool setting here is the vignetting strength. Increase this, you'll notice the edges are darkened, and it's a vignette. This allows you to create a nice image that actually, darkening the edges will pull the focus of the viewer in towards the center where your object is.